Ryan Day suffers his first loss against a Big Ten opponent as Michigan snaps an 8-game losing streak to Ohio State, their first win in the series since 2011. It had been 10 years since they last beat the Buckeyes, and they beat them by 15. You didn't even need the points. The game goes over the total of 64.5. Josh Pate told you to take Michigan in the points. He was at the Big House. He saw the scuffle. He saw the chaos. The chaos ensued, and now Michigan clinches a spot in the Big Ten championship. Michigan and Hassan Haskins, have a day, kids. So Jim Harbaugh wins the biggest game of his coaching career, beating Ohio State. Finally, he had previously been 0-5. He wins by 15 to give Michigan its first win over Ohio State since 2011. You remember at Big Ten Media Days, he was asked about beating Ohio State, said we're going to do it or die trying. He does it. His team does it. Ohio State's chances, though, to make it a college football playoff, they die on this day in Ann Arbor. Wherever they go, there is chaos, and there was chaos at the Big House. Welcoming the host of the Late Kick, Josh Pate, and Big Game Dennis Dodd. You are there. That game was ridiculous, Josh. Your first time ever covering the Ohio State-Michigan game, and Michigan wins for the first time in the series since 2011. What the heck happened?
Well, Michigan controlled a football game. That's what happened in the middle of a snow globe, Dennis. When you came down on the field, I asked you, Dennis, what stood out the most to you? Because to me, it's not that we saw the upset. The line on this thing was 7.5. I mean, stranger things have happened. But it's the manner in which Michigan won. There was never a moment in this game where you said, Ohio State's done grabbed control of this thing. It was a brief lead for the Buckeyes, but largely it was line of scrimmage, edge Michigan. Run game, overwhelmingly, edge Michigan. And they did everything in the end you would expect a Jim Harbaugh team to do en route to, like we just said, the first win in this series since 2011.
And it only took 7 long years to do this. I mean, literally, 15 out of 16, 8 in a row. To finally get here. We talked to Cade McNamara just in the post game, and he said, we've been playing these guys since January. Like in their heads, they've been playing Ohio State. So they've been running their stuff. In spring and in off season, there's got that sign in the locker room that says, what have you done to beat Ohio State today? Well, today they dominated physically, something Michigan is known for, going back to a guy named Bo Schembechler, 294 yards rushing, 169 by Hassan Haskins, 5 touchdowns. But I thought it was the mentality. They were going to go down doing this or die trying. We talked to Aiden Hutchinson in the tunnel after the game. He put it out there this week. We're going to win this game or I'm going to die trying. I said, what is that like? And he said, you just saw it. So it's incredible.
And so much pain relieved when we were in Waco watching Baylor take down Oklahoma and the field was stormed. We saw a lot of kids coming at us. Okay, I'm telling you today, we saw some kids coming at us, but I saw some 30-year-olds, some 40-year-olds, saw a couple of seasoned citizens coming down, and they had some spring in their step like they haven't had in quite a while.
No, a little bit of I can die happy now. Some of that. The Rangers in '94. I can die happy now. A lot of that on the field.
Well, you know who doesn't have to die is Jim Harbaugh, because we're going to do it or die trying. He gets his first win in the series. He'd previously been 0-5 and now gets the biggest win of his career there at Michigan. Dennis, what does this mean for Jim Harbaugh?
Well, a huge weight off his shoulders. I ran into his brother-in-law, John Furborn, and his wife, Sarah, and they just had a look of relief because they'd have to live this too. Jim Harbaugh's inconsolable, like any coach after he loses a game, especially Ohio State. And to do it this way is amazing. And they've got to win 2 more big games, maybe 3 or 4 big games to get it done. I would say there'd be nothing bigger than this. They can get to the playoff, but it's not going to be bigger than this.
I think when you go back to 2 years ago, the talk around Jim Harbaugh, and then last year they didn't play this game, obviously, but the talk around Jim Harbaugh was not just is he going to be our coach next year, and not just is Michigan going to get rid of him. Dennis, there were people around the country in the college football world saying, is he even going to want to come back?
Right.
And of course, that was a misguided sentiment, as it turns out, if you know anything about him. But I was right next to him on the field. I shot as much as I could on my phone, just being there and taking in what you knew had to be, like you just said, a literal weight of the world off of a man's shoulders to finally get it done and get it done here in the big house for added emphasis.
I talked to people inside the program after each one of these losses. How is he? As it started to go to 0-5. Is he still dedicated? Does he still want to do it? And they said, absolutely. And think about, I don't know what the word is, being humbled by taking $4 million, if that's the word, and having to change 6 assistants and then rededicating yourself. You know, he put it out there. I'm not saying he never focused on Ohio State like John Cooper, you know, was run out of town for not being Michigan, but it was never out there. In the offseason, in July, I mentioned the die trying line. There was that sign in the locker room that said, what have you done to beat Ohio State today? Well, we saw it today.
Yeah.
And they are a national concern. They haven't been a national concern, winning 10 games, 4 of the 7 seasons, getting to the top, but never quite the mountaintop, and now they're to be celebrated.
Michigan's running attack, 15th in the FBS, averaging just over 218 yards per game. They get to nearly 300 in this game. That's because Hassan Haskins had himself a day. 5 rushing touchdowns. Never been done against Ohio State. He absolutely dominated this game. Josh, when you're watching this unfold and they keep feeding the football to Hassan Haskins, what are you thinking to yourself?
I'm thinking the last time we came to the state of Michigan to do a game, a guy by the name of Kenneth Walker looked the exact same way. And it was like watching a mirror image of what we saw in East Lansing about a month ago. And you were talking about his comments after the game. It was a lot of the whole gonna do it or die trying sort of mentality. And he just flat out said, I wasn't gonna be stopped today.
He said in the post game, I decided today I'm not going down. And of course he did, but you saw the way he ran. It was going to be that type of day. Trayvon Henderson didn't match it. Ohio State didn't match that intensity. And we should talk about the false starts, the 10 penalties by Ohio State, 5 false starts on that offensive line. As much as we talk about the big house and how big it is and intimidating, in the industry, it's not. The noise goes straight up. Today it meant something. There were 111,500 people today that weren't going to leave until they saw this. They might still be here if they were losing. I don't know. But that's the kind of intensity we had.
I can tell you this, being down on the field for this one, in the midst of all this, number one, it didn't deter this crowd at all. In fact, if anything, it energized it. But, I'd never been here before. And so I'd heard, like you just said, Dennis, a lot of the reputation. Going to be a lot of folks, but if you close your eyes, it's not going to sound like there are that many of them in here. Well, at least for this game, they were wrong because it did. And if you don't believe it, look at the stat sheet like Dennis just said, because you can see it totaled in that penalty column for the Buckeyes.
Well, the weather certainly played a factor. The intensity played a factor. And I want to take you back, Josh, to your own video that you had in the tunnel of Ohio State and Michigan mixing it up at halftime. Give me your perspective here.
It's an interesting setup here. It's kind of like the Cotton Bowl. When we were covering OU Texas, it's a shared tunnel. And anytime you walk into a building and you see that shared tunnel set up, there's a chance things could always go sideways. And so I go up there, full disclosure, to grab something to eat ahead of time, before halftime, and here come those teams, and that goes down. And if you'll notice, I'm not going to say this is anything more than anecdotal, but if you'll notice in that video, the team in maize and blue looked to be the aggressor a whole lot more than the team in scarlet and gray, just trying to retreat to the locker room. But when we came out in the third quarter, Dennis, and you had the personal foul down here, and then they went at it a little bit, I thought this crowd took it to another level. I thought the energy on the Michigan sideline took it to another level. And look at what they did to come out of the locker room. They scored 3 consecutive possessions. So sometimes that stuff means nothing. Today, maybe it did mean something.
Yeah, defensive back for Ohio State ripped the helmet off Roman Wilson, the Michigan receiver, and that's how it started. He got the 15 yards for the unsportsmanlike conduct. But to your point, your video that went viral, obviously, I thought it was really funny. They were lobbing birds at each other, and the referees are in the middle of it, blowing their whistles like it's some Ric Flair wrestling match, like a dead ball foul in the middle of the tunnel. And I thought it was entertaining to us who were watching it, that it carried out on the field. There was a lot of frustration on the Big Blue side today.
Equipment managers also going at it. Let's not overlook the equipment managers getting into the fracas.
That tells you how intense this rivalry is. Right there, in the tunnel, in the end zone, ripping helmets off, flipping birds. Interestingly, Cameron Brown was the guy that ripped the helmet off of Roman Wilson. Then it was Hassan Haskins hurdling Cameron Brown on that drive for his 5th touchdown. And in the end, it's Michigan that hurdles Ohio State, both on the field and now in the rankings as Michigan pulls off the upset. Josh Pate told you to take Michigan and the points, and it is go blue. It is hail victors indeed. Wow. Hail to the victors and hail to our guys out there in the snow globe. Josh Pate, Dennis Dodd. The big game follows them. Incredible stuff from those guys. And a lot of streaks snapped on Saturday for Ohio State. 29 straight wins against Big Ten teams, snapped. Ryan Day, 25 straight wins against Big Ten teams, over. 8-game winning streak against Michigan, over. Remember, it was Jim Harbaugh. When he was asked about beating Ohio State, we said, quote, we're going to do it or die trying. And on this day, Ohio State's chances to make the College Football Playoff perish in Ann Arbor at the Big House.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.